We respect their spiritual relationship to the land. We hope to learn from them how we can live together in peace and justice. And this morning I have a little added reading about the Western Abenaki that comes from this book I discovered, which is written by Carol Irons, an Abenaki elder, and was published just last year. And Artley, I will let you see this so you can order copies for our library, because the wish of the Vermont Commission on Indian Affairs is that all Vermonters read and learn the history of the Abenakis from the Abenakis. So this is the first lesson. Living in harmony with all other beings, develop perspectives and values which help define the social organization and lifestyle of the two-leggeds. According to the original instructions, the attitudes were respect, not dominance, reciprocity, not abuse, generosity, not greed, individual freedom, but never at the expense of community, give back to community in exchange for individual well-being. Community included the web of life of which the human beings were an integral and dependent part. This pattern of living kept the Abenaki people healthy. They were careful to stay in balance with what the web of life provided, an obligation to ensure provisions to the next 7 generations. Welcome. My name is Ellen Flight, and I am the worship associate this morning and part of the worship committee. It's so nice to see some familiar faces who are back after a long absence of in-person time with us. It just really brings great joy, and I'd also like to welcome those of you who are joining us via Zoom and encourage you, as you are able, to return to see and be with all of us in person. I hope to see many of you soon. So as part of the welcome, I'd also like to highlight some of our pathways to connection that are in your order of service. And those include some wonderful opportunities for you to be of service to the church and connect with more people. And that includes becoming an usher, helping with the social hour hospitality, and or being one of the safety assistants. Those are all great ways to have a little low entry level that opens the rest of the congregation to you. So I encourage you to consider one of those opportunities. I'd also like to mention the Pollinator Pathway Project, which 3 of our members are working on, Lise, Bethany, and Jerry Loney. Are any of the 3 of you here to just raise your hand if someone would like to speak with you after the service? Okay. Some UU friends are looking for some help with some house sitting that fell through, so that's a note there. And then this is also another really important for our larger community, because we do community service within and then within our larger community, and that is there's a critical shortage of Meals on Wheels volunteers in Middlebury, and you can see Mary Conlon, who leads the CVUUS team for Meals on Wheels. The other thing I would like to mention is that for those of you who could benefit from some assistance with your hearing of the service, these work really well. They've just checked them all. They're on the chair in the back, or somebody can have this set, and it will enhance your experience here this morning, if that would be of help to you. Our call to worship this morning is number 417 in the gray hymnal, and I'll read it aloud for everyone. For the beauty of the earth, this spinning blue-green ball, yes, Gaia, mother of everything, we walk gently across your back to come together again in this place, to remember how we can live, to remember who we are, to create how we will be. Gaia, our home, the lap in which we live, welcome us. Barbara Pescan. And now, if you will join me while Barnaby lights the chalice. And the reason I'm standing over here is because out of an abundance of caution, since I recently had a little exposure to somebody positive, I had tested this morning. I'm negative, but I'm just being a little farther away. So if you'll join me in the reading. The light is returning. It's on the screen for those of you at home or in your order of service for those of you who are here. Around us, light is returning. It kindles the spirit of life in the skeleton of trees. It brings forth new shoots from the soil. It wakes us from our winter slumber and invites us to see what lies beyond. We light this chalice in the spirit of our earth's awakening and to reaffirm our commitment to the value of our home. And now the choir will sing for us.
It's tricky doing that with earrings. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Poppy Reese, the Director of Religious Exploration, which means I have the joy and privilege of doing the programs with children and youth. And I'm going to share a story today called Planting the Trees of Kenya, the story of Wangari Maathai. So for those of you on Zoom, the pictures are on the screen. They are for people in the room also. I realize the screen's still a bit low. We're going to get it up high, but we're still kind of tweaking where we want it. Feel free to move around if you need a better seat. As Wangari Maathai tells it, when she was growing up on a farm in the hills of central Kenya, the earth was clothed in its dress of green. Next. Fig trees, olive trees, crotons, and flame trees covered the land, and fish filled the pure waters of the streams. The fig tree was sacred then, and Wangari knew not to disturb it, not even to carry its fallen branches home for firewood. In the stream near her homestead, where she went to collect water for her mother, she played with glistening frogs' eggs, trying to gather them like beads into necklaces, though they slipped through her fingers back into the clear water. Next. Her heart was filled with the beauty of her native Kenya when she left to attend a college run by Benedictine nuns in America, far, far from her home. There she studied biology, the science of living things. It was an inspiring time for Wangari. The students in America in those years dreamed of making the world better. The nuns, too, taught Wangari to think not just of herself, but of the world beyond herself. How eagerly she returned to Kenya, how full of hope and of all that she had learned. Next. She had been away for 5 years, only 5 years, but they might have been 20. So changed was the landscape of Kenya. Wangari found the fig tree cut down. The little stream dried up, and no trace of frogs, tadpoles, or the silvery beads of eggs. Where once there had been little farms growing what each family needed to live on, and large plantations growing tea for export, now almost all the farms were growing crops to sell. Wangari noticed that the people no longer grew what they ate, but bought food from stores. The store food was expensive, and the little they could afford was not as good for them as what they had grown themselves, so that children, even grown-ups, were weaker and often sickly. Next. Next again. There we go. She saw that once where there had been richly wooded hills with grazing cows and goats, now the land was almost treeless, the woods gone. So many trees had been cut down to clear the way for more farms that women and children had to walk farther and farther in search of firewood to heat a pot or warm the house. Sometimes they walked for hours before they found a tree or a bush to cut down. There were fewer and fewer trees with each one they cut, and much of the land was as bare as a desert. Next. Without trees, there were no roots to hold the soil in place. Without trees, there was no shade. The rich topsoil dried to dust, and the devil wind blew it away. Rain washed the loose earth into the once clear streams and rivers, dirtying them with silt. Next. We have no clean drinking water, the women of the countryside complained. No firewood to cook with. Our goats and cows have nothing to graze on, so they make little milk. Our children are hungry, and we are poorer than before. Wangari saw that people who had once honored fig trees and now cut them down had forgotten to care for the land that fed them. Now the land, weak and suffering, could no longer take care of the people, and their lives became harder than ever. The women blamed others. They blamed the government. But Wangari was not one to complain. She wanted to do something. Think of what we ourselves are doing, she urged the women. We are cutting down the trees of Kenya. When we see that we are part of the problem, she said, we can become part of the solution. She had a simple and big idea. Next. Why not plant trees? She showed them how to collect tree seeds from the trees that remained. She taught them to prepare the soil, mixing it with manure. She showed them how to wet that soil, press a hole in it with a stick, and carefully insert a seed. Most of all, she taught them to tend the growing seedlings as if they were babies, watering them twice a day to make sure they grew strong. It wasn't easy. Water was always hard to come by. Often the women had to dig a deep hole by hand and climb into it to haul heavy bucketfuls of water up over their heads and back out of the hole. An early nursery in Wangari's backyard failed. Almost all the seedlings died. But Wangari was not one to give up, and she showed others how not to give up. Many of the women could not read or write. They were mothers and farmers, and no one took them seriously. But they did not need schooling to plant trees. They did not have to wait for the government to help them. They could begin to change their own lives. All this was heavy work, but the women felt proud. Slowly, all around them, they could begin to see the fruit of the work of their hands. The woods were growing up again. Now when they cut down a tree, they planted 2 in its place. Their families were healthier, eating from the fruit trees they had planted and from the vegetable plots filled again with the yams, cassava, pigeon peas, and sorghum they grew so well. They had work to do, and the work brought them together as one, like the trees growing together on the newly wooded hills. The men saw what their wives, mothers, and daughters were doing and admired them and even joined in. Next. Wangari gave seedlings to the schools and taught the children how to make their own nurseries. Next. She gave seedlings to inmates of prisons and even to soldiers. You hold your gun, she told the soldiers, but what are you protecting? The whole country's disappearing with the wind and water. You should hold the gun in your right hand and a tree seedling in your left. That's when you become a good soldier. And so, in the 40 or so years since Wangari began her movement, tree by tree, person by person, 30 million trees have been planted in Kenya, and the planting has not stopped. When the soil is exposed, Wangari tells us, it is crying out for help. It is naked and needs to be clothed in its dress. That is the nature of the land. It needs color. It needs cloth of green. Next. Next. This is Wangari, or was Wangari. She's no longer alive. Next. So, Wangari Maathai said, this is a quote that, if you look her up, it's the quote that comes up the most often for her, actually. It's the little things that citizens do. That's what will make a difference. And she also said, the little big thing that I do is trees. So the question that I leave all of us with, all of you with, everybody at home on Zoom with, is what is your little big thing? And now we take the offering.
Thank you, Poppy. For those of you who are new to us or visiting, we have 2 chalices here. This is the children's chalice, and normally when they leave, when they were with us at the beginning of the service, which will happen again, COVID willing, at some point, Poppy would tell the story, the children would hear the story, she would show them the book, and that was before we had the screen so the grown-ups could see it. And then they would take their chalice away. So we keep lighting this chalice as a pledge to the fact that we're looking forward to the day when they're back with us at the beginning of the service. I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. And the other thing that we have because of the new screen is the words up for all the hymns. Because of COVID, we're not yet encouraging everybody to sing every hymn. But we are encouraging people to hum along and learn the tunes and watch the words while the choir sings them for us. And we have moved, because of the current COVID levels, to a practice of allowing everybody to sing at the end of the service when we're going to be clearing the room relatively quickly after that. So if you came to sing today, stay seated for that last hymn where you'll be able to sing along. Now, our offering today, before I mention who we're sharing our plate with, I just want to say that during the past week, we got a letter from our donee in November, a group called Honor the Earth, which provides, it's a nonprofit based in Minnesota, and it provides funding to help raise awareness and support grassroots native environmental groups as they do their work wherever Indigenous people live. And we got this wonderful thank you note from them, plus a calendar that has all the Indigenous full moon names on it. And if you go downstairs for coffee hour after the service, which everybody's invited to do, you will see that on the bulletin board over the drinking fountain. So I invite you to look at that and know that we do get wonderful feedback from this practice of sharing our weekly offering with different groups. Now this month, because of the concerns about protection of reproductive health, we are sharing our plate all this month with Planned Parenthood of Middlebury. And they provide all kinds of services, not just reproductive health, but all kinds of health services to women. And we wanted, because they share so many of our values, to share our offering this month. So I invite you to be as generous as you're able. Those of you who want to contribute via the program can just put your phone on the mark there in the program, and the opportunity to do that electronically will come up. Otherwise, while Ronnie's playing, we invite you to bring a donation to the basket, the smaller basket, and the bigger basket is if you were filling out a yellow card for me to share in milestones, you can put it in the bigger basket. So the offering will now be received, and Ronnie, take it away. Excuse me, we have a testimonial from Marnie.
Do I need to pull this out? Chance to be taller. Whew. Good morning. Hannah Sessions asked me if I would share what I'm going to share. I have to tell you that yesterday I was reading the Addison Independent. I don't always look at the cosmic forecast, but I did yesterday. I'm a Gemini, so I'm already dealing with two of me. And the forecast, the cosmic forecast said, communication difficulties arise this week. Someone can coach you into getting your point across with sufficient finesse. Seek a communicator mentor. Well, believe me, my mother, who is no longer alive, would be chuckling mightily because my report cards in elementary school would come home with, great student, loves learning, talks too much. So I'm going to share a bit about how ripples.
I'm just going to move this up so maybe it'll be a little less echo for you.
Okay. Thinking about ripples in our lives, how they have emanated from our actions, as well as the many ripples that have come toward us, several key words come to mind for me. Ripples in a certain location in terms of geography, ripples that support our needs, that are sought for relevance in one's life, ripples where we step forth with loved ones or completely on our own, making personal choices. So I invite you to come along with me for a little quick time travel to the church of my childhood. In a very quick moment, I can access the memory of being one of the speakers for Youth Sunday at Trinity Methodist Church in the North Park area of San Diego. Now, I have no idea what I said as an adolescent that particular morning, looking out at the congregation. I just remember how I needed to remember to not be so nervous and speak slowly. I'm guessing my message had to do with the important aspect of being part of the church community. I was a member of the junior choir. I was part of the youth group. My family had attended church regularly. In fact, the church had attracted other young families who met once a month and formed relationships, friendships that lasted through the rest of their lives. Interestingly, the second time I spoke to that particular congregation was on a Canvas Sunday at a luncheon in the fellowship hall. I see now that those early actions and how my family's life created and received ripples of involvement provided nourishment and also modeled choices that I might make as I moved into adulthood. When I lived in San Francisco for nearly 10 years, my husband and I found an apartment a short block distance to Grace Cathedral on Nob Hill. Randy and I had been college sweethearts and had made a choice to worship in Episcopal churches, which happened to be his childhood experience. His job had brought us to the city, and the familiarity of the services, the staff, and the members of the congregation at the cathedral were all very welcoming to us. The location was perfect. We could walk there in a few minutes. I had typing skills, and on a sunny day when I walked into the cathedral office to volunteer, as I often did, the pastor welcomed me warmly. I observed a lingering smile while he considered something. "Marnie, would you come into my office?" I soon realized that I had seen the moment of his brain's light bulb clicking on. Apparently, his secretary had just moments before informed him that she was leaving her position. And suddenly, the pastor, Reverend Wilmington, had a vacancy to fill, and I was available. I spent 2.5 years working as his secretary, administrative assistant. The staff was wonderful. I worshiped in the magnificent Gothic-style cathedral. I even had a chance to see the famous film director, Alfred Hitchcock, who filmed a scene from his very last movie. Some of you would have no idea about this, but he also made a film with the title Marnie, about a compulsive thief. Anyway, that was a big thrill, the several days that he was filming. I made friends at the cathedral who are still very dear. I was able also to secure a position teaching 3rd grade at the Cathedral School for Boys, right there next to the cathedral. And one of my former students from that period is a talented medical doctor here in Vermont, so connecting with him has been a glorious ripple. "I had such a crush on you when I was in 3rd grade, he said. "Can't believe we're all grown up now." In January of 1983, I dropped into Middlebury to visit my sister Nancy. I was at a point of change and new direction in my life. I decided to stay, and I have never regretted that choice. When Nan and her husband Ed were early attendees as this congregation was forming, I was being an Episcopalian over at St. Stephen's. But I realized I could have more time with my sister, my brother-in-law, and their two children, Winter and Aslan. And that's when this group was at the community house in East Middlebury. So ripples of invitations, ripples of involvement were also invitations. I was asked to serve on the worship committee that organized our twice-a-month services. I liked that opportunity very much, and I did it for 8 years. I've served on many committees. I've been in the choir consistently since my late husband Ron organized the very first version. Obviously, my family upbringing gave me an opportunity to experience the ripples that can emanate from being involved in a church organization. Participation has brought nourishment through worship and provided pathways for increased learning through expansion of ideas and exposure to others. The architecture of this building of ours and its soaring sanctuary space has offered an opportunity for me to explore a volunteer commitment that has become a deeply nourishing activity. It has allowed me to bring the beauty of the outdoors inside to enhance the space where we worship. This active creativity within the special bonds of intentional work spreads joy and offers a certain comfort for those who enter our space. The members of our Flower Co-op ministry understand that our collective work has become a presence that brings pleasure and a solid foundation for our time as volunteers within the framework and structure of our community. So in summary, with finesse, I worship, I volunteer, I support financially, I share myself, I benefit, I grow and develop. I live with love because I am a member of this faith community. Ripples are the lives we touch through our contact and what we offer of ourselves. Ripples that broadcast love in our world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marnie. One of the features of the Canvas usually in pre-COVID times was visiting each other's homes, and we learned a lot about each other's faith journey through that. So this kind of a testimonial for this particular Canvas, when we're not doing that, is a way to capture that spirit of learning who we are as we consider how we will remain devoted to this community in the year to come with our pledges. And another way we learn who we are is by sharing milestones and passages. So the first, our worship associate, Ellen, you may have heard that she was going to retire after her, is it 20 years leading Sangha Diwan? Pardon? 24 years leading Sangha Diwan. But this past week, she was able to say she really feels like she's going to retire because her replacement has been hired. So that is her milestone. Another job change to share. Esther Thomas will be Middlebury College's new Assistant Director of Community Standards. Now, along with this promotion comes the first opportunity to not live in a dorm for her in a long, long time. So that's a big milestone in her life, and she and Jesse and the two children will be looking for a house in town. One other announcement of a career change I want to share, a lot of you may have seen in the Addison Independent, but if you didn't, Fernanda Canales who some of you may not know is a member of the congregation, is retiring after 16 years as principal of the Salisbury Community School and 39 years in education. And in my emails back and forth with her, Fernanda said that one of the things she's hoping to do when she retires is actually spend some more time with CVUUS. And meanwhile, she said to me, and this was so beautiful, I wanted to share it, knowing ahead of time that I am in my last year of a beloved profession is actually quite a gift. I am appreciating and experiencing deep gratitude for each and every day I get to serve the community. So, congratulations to Fernanda for this wonderful last lap, and we're looking forward to seeing more of her here. I got a message from Ginny Mosier yesterday, which is some sad news. She said that Jinsey Frost, a member of our congregation who had moved to a retirement community near Troy, had died, and I got in touch with Lindsay, Jinsey's daughter, and Lindsay sent me this note, which I'm going to share with you. I don't think there's going to be a memorial service here, so consider this a very, very mini memorial service for Jinsey. Although the past couple of months were difficult and she had been in hospice the past week, nothing ever really prepares one for the loss of a special person like my mom. I am frankly shattered. I am so grateful for her unwavering spirit, positive spirit, and kindness. And I know that is her legacy because I see the same in my children. One of her children, for those of you who don't know, is White Sox All-Star pitcher Lucas Giolito. We will always remember her with love in our hearts and know she helped make the world a kinder, safer place for all children she had taught and all of the grown-ups who came in contact with her. This refers to the fact that although Jinsey was an accomplished actress, she went into a teaching career so that her husband, Warren, who was also an actor, could pursue his acting career. She was unerringly polite, classy, and respectful, with a wonderful sense of humor, and had just the right amount of sarcasm. There wasn't anything she wasn't up to or game for, and every outing with her would be just the best day ever. Thank you for welcoming her into your world. She loved being a part of it. And although Alzheimer's had gradually taken away many of her recent memories, she always remembered you all in Middlebury and singing. Oh, how she loved to sing. So that was from Lindsay, and we'll stay in touch, and I'll let you know anything more we hear about what the family plans to do. I have a special soft spot in my heart for Jinsey because when we first moved here, when you called me as your minister, we were temporarily in a cottage in Eastview, and Jinsey and her husband occupied the cottage after us. So I always got the mail that went there forwarded on Sunday when she came to church. A note from Elizabeth Golden came in this week. She has a second bout with COVID. She got it early, and then she has a long COVID case. So this is really, really hard for Elizabeth, and we've been in touch. We brought her some food already, and any kind of cards and support I know will be appreciated for Elizabeth Golden, and the Caring Network is on the case. And Marnie also sent me something, because Friday night she had a mysterious run-in with her oil furnace that started to fill the house with smoke. And she just wanted to say she phoned 911 after turning off the furnace, and is extremely grateful to the emergency responders who came to the house, including David Shaw in the fire department, who sorted out everything for her, gave her peace of mind, and cleaned out the smoke from the house and arranged for the technician to come in and repair the furnace. So all is well, and she's just filled with gratitude for how the community responded. Wanted to share that with you. And I know she isn't the only person who's had a great experience with our emergency responders, so it's always good to be reminded. And lastly, I just want to share something with you that I hope will make people feel that there is progress happening in all of this mess that we hear about. All these little things happen. I got an email this week from the University of California, Berkeley School of Law, which I attended as background for my journalism career. And they said that as of the incoming class, all students will be required, in order to graduate, to take at least one class on how laws and legal institutions are shaped by racism and other forms of systemic inequality. And the faculty is also committed to offering enough courses that fit that requirement that people will be able to fulfill it relatively conveniently, or even take more than one course. Whole generation of lawyers coming out of one of the top schools in the country being required to have studied this. And this kind of progress is going on in other places, and it's a great sign for all of us. I invite you into a moment of silence, meditation, to connect with what's on your hearts this morning, because there are always unspoken joys and concerns and milestones. And once we've had this time of silence, we'll be ready to go on with the rest of the service. Ronnie and the choir will bring us out of it with the hymn, What Is This Life? And the lyrics to that will again be on the screen.
Our first reading is number 608 and comes from Kabir, sometimes referred to as Saint Kabir Das. He was a 15th century mystic poet, not easily categorized as either Sufi or yogi. He was revered by Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs, and considered a bridge between the great traditions that live in India. Inside this clay jug are the canyons and pine mountains, and the maker of canyons and pine mountains. All 7 oceans are inside, and hundreds of millions of stars. The acid that tests gold is here, and the one who judges jewels, and the music that comes from the strings that no one touches, and the source of all water. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friend, listen. The God whom I love is inside. Our second reading is number 551 and comes from the Ute Indians who live in the Great Basin of the Southwest, 150 miles east of Salt Lake City. Today, many of the approximately 7,000 Utes live on 3 reservations, the largest of which is called Uinta and Ouray, which is the second largest reservation in the United States with over 4.5 million acres. The Confederation of the Utes were known to be the first tribe to steal horses from the Spanish who had come up from the south of the Utes' traditional lands. They were skilled traders and were known for the quality of their deer skins. Barnaby and I will now read Earth, Teach Me. Earth, teach me stillness as the grasses are stilled with light.
Earth, teach me suffering as old stones suffer with memory.
Earth, teach me caring as parents who secure their young.
Earth, teach me courage as the tree which stands all alone.
Earth, teach me limitations as the ant which crawls on the ground.
Earth, teach me freedom as the eagle which soars in the sky.
Earth, teach me resignation as the leaves die in the fall.
Earth, teach me regeneration as the seed which rises in the spring.
Earth, teach me to forget myself as melted snow forgets its life.
Earth, teach me to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain. Thank you, Ellen. So this is an unusual thing for me. It's a 2-part sermon that started last week. And during the week, for the first time since I had to part with my dog last fall, I went out on the exact walk where Pan and I used to encounter that little saw-whet owl of my mind, who this congregation knows as Philia. And I reported to Philia about last week. So I'm just going to let you know a little bit about that conversation. And I said to Philia that I was putting forth the idea that as Unitarian Universalists, we would really do a good thing if we started devoting as much attention to the run-up to Earth Day as Christians developed in their Lent period looking at Easter, or in Advent looking at Christmas, that Earth Day ought to be an incredibly important spiritual holiday, and if it was, it needed some time of anticipation and build-up. And Philia said, well, that's pretty interesting. How did they take it? And I said, well, I'm not sure. I covered so much ground, it was probably a little confusing. I gave some specific examples of what I was thinking about, and I told a little bit about the history of other Unitarian Universalist efforts to do something different with Lent. And I said, and I made a big point of the importance of talking with the animal world, both the animals that are in our lives like Pan and the animals that are in our minds like you. And Philia said, oh, well, that's interesting. Of course, I'm not around a lot. I think you should talk to Abbott's thrush, Abbott Fenn's thrush. And I said, well, Philia said, well, look, Abbott Fenn's thrush is there in the sanctuary. Whenever you need inspiration, it will be there. And I said, well, a lot of people don't really know about it. It's way up there in the corner. And in order for you to see a little bit better what Abbott Fenn's thrush is, there's a close-up. When this sanctuary was built, Abbott Fenn had the workmen put his thrush up in the corner. And the first time the sexton came in to clean, they thought, oh, damn it, there's a bird in here. How am I going to get it out? And they got a ladder and everything before they realized that Abbot Fenn's thrush was just going to sit there and observe. And so I said to Philia, well, how much help is Abbot Fenn's thrush going to be? They say most of communication is body language, and Abbot Fenn's thrush is not giving us any body language. And Philia said, oh, I think you'll be able to hear a lot if you try, which is the whole point of this run-up to Earth Day, trying a lot of new things to help us hear and think a lot more. So I began entertaining the idea of what the thrush might want me to talk about. And of course, the first thing that occurred to me is that the day today is the spring equinox. Well, there's no better thing for understanding the equinox than just sitting absolutely still forever and mapping where the sun goes. So more than anyone in this room, Abbot Fenn's thrush, I'm sure, is aware that the equinox will occur at 11:33 today here in Middlebury. And we may not be able to see the sun at that point unless the weather changes. But this will mark the time in the spring when the days continue to get longer, but the period by which they extend gets shorter and shorter on our way to the summer solstice. So the maximum gain in our daylight was yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And it has to do with when the sun crosses the equator in relation to the Earth is actually incredibly complicated. And I won't try and say more about it, except that it's important to me that this incredible celestial event, which is at the basis of a lot of pagan religions, is one of the events that will happen every single year in the run-up to Earth Day. So there's one day when we can be thinking about this as part of our preparations for really understanding our worshipful relationship with the earth. So I thank Abbott's thrush for helping me get my mind around that. And I am grateful that for our purposes, it's always going to be part of the 40-day run-up to Earth Day, which is on April 22nd by the dictate of the United Nations. I might add that some people think the equinox should be Earth Day, and there are some people who celebrate it on the equinox, but that's not the majority view. So that led me into some thinking about what else I wanted to share with you in the recap. And I did want to share that there is something you can go to called UU Lent, which is geared towards Easter and is 40 days of particular words, day by day, to think about, which was geared towards understanding our place in the world as a discipline of deep intention and appreciation for interrelatedness and for openness, not having to do with the idea of suffering with Jesus on the cross. And if you are following the UU Lent calendar, the word for today is compassion. And you would be asked to think about compassion and then to do something to enact compassion. But, as I said last week, my take is that we should not be gearing our preparation to Easter, but to Earth Day. And last week, this is how I put it. Every day, we pick something from our world and consider specifically how that relates to our commitment to make life on Earth in this time of destructive and increasingly violent climate change more just, compassionate, beautiful, and above all else, sustainable for humans and other beings. So that's my definition from last week, and I gave you a scattered bunch of examples of the kinds of things people might do to get into a more spiritual state of mind as Earth Day approached. And rather than repeat those examples from last week, I'm going to just name 4 more examples just from this morning, from today. The mention of our November Doni, Honor the Earth, and thinking about the creation of a group that funds Native American efforts to work on this sustainability issue and gives us that marginalized voice is one thing we could be thinking about on one of our days of run-up. Poppy's Time for All Ages about the amazing life and work of Wangari Maathai is another. The role of an individual as citizen in creating sustainability and change in the world. Our choices of music, all of our hymns today, as you ponder the lyrics, if you look closely at them, invite you into a space of thinking about our relationship with Earth. And every day you go out and choose some music. You have that opportunity to choose music that reflects that relationship. And then again, there's my engagement with Abbott's Thrush, seeking a story that's emotionally and spiritually true, which is the Native American definition of a true story, as opposed to one that is factually true in the sense of it actually speaking to me. So the thrush invites us into thinking about the doing component as opposed to just being in the moment. What do we do? What stories do we create day by day that help us move into this spiritual relationship with the earth? So I also said to you very briefly last week, but it's important so I want to repeat it, that one idea of how to do this might be to think about our relationship with all the other beings, plants and animals on Earth, in the first 10 days of the 40-day period, to think about our relationship with things and everything we create and technologies and systems in the second 10-day period, and to think about our relationships with each other for the last 20 days. It's that important, and it echoes the wisdom of the Jewish holidays, of the High Holy Days in the fall, where you have to clean up your relationships with other people before you are worthy of approaching God and asking to be inscribed in the Book of Life for another year. So we would have a spring and a fall observation of time about how our relationships contribute to justice and beauty and harmony with the earth. To do this a little more specifically, I want to go back to our second reading. It has a lot of words that are words that encourage thinking, and it's why it's in our hymnal, and it's why a lot of those same words show up in the UU Lent list. Quiet, suffering, humility, caring, courage. But I want you to think about this reading as a kind of a Bible for people who live in a different setting than we do. If you learned everything that the Utes asked to be taught by Earth, you would learn everything you need to lead a humble, sustainable life. But it's set, their Bible comes from their experience and their relationship with their land. The Bible of a group that lived in a rainforest would have very different images. And their Bible comes from a time when there was not the level of scientific understanding that we have. So it speaks, for instance, teach me the limitations of the ant which crawls on the ground. If you only notice crawling on the ground as the limitation of the ant, and you don't notice its incredible social structure, you don't know anything about the true limitations on an ant. So I would argue that in our run-up to Earth Day, what we want is a religion that takes us as far as possible with our understanding of science and all of the ideas that that creates for us. And then says, all right, now faith can take over and lead me on into the places that science can't carry me. So if you get a chance to go back to Earth Teach Me and look through it, I think you'll find a lot of ways of adding to it from where you sit today in our society, as opposed to being a Native American with a liturgy that came out of living in the dry mountains of the West. What we're talking about here is finding the way that we can be transformed. If we were a Ute, we would be transformed by really living out this prayer. But we need to find a way that we can be transformed so our relationship with the earth can be transformed. And this is the work of all religion. If you go through the Earth Teach Me prayer, you will find examples of it, in other words, in all of the other religions. Earth, teach me to forget myself as the snow melts, forgets its life, and to remember kindness as dry fields weep with rain. Well, the Dalai Lama speaks of kindness without ever referring to a nature metaphor. He told the United States Congress when he visited in 2014, be kind whenever possible. It's always possible. So the same idea is there in every single religious resources. We have a lot to play with because as UUs, we draw on many different traditions to keep our religion vital. I'm going to just close by bringing us back to that last reading, or actually it was the first reading, the clay jug. So if we were following my model, how to do this, we would be in the period of time where we're talking about our relationship with things. And a clay jug is something humans make. There are no naturally occurring clay jugs. And Kabir looks into his clay jug and he says, everything is in that clay jug. If you want the truth, I will tell you the truth. Friends, listen. Even the God who I love is inside the clay jug, after he's named all of these other things. And I think if we work on having our relationships with our technologies and all the other things in our life work like this clay jug, we'll never be disconnected from our relationship with the spirit of life or whatever we think of as God. It will be in our technologies as much as it's in our relationships with each other. And so that's my prayer for us on this day, that we think about this step-by-step process up to Earth Day. I won't be with you on Earth Day. I'll be on my sabbatical. So I tell you, I cannot wait to hear what you end up doing together on Earth Day and what happens on all those days in between. This congregation is filled with amazing people. You can do amazing things. And it did occur to me, this was one of the last things actually that Abbott's Thrush suggested to me, that if everybody else did some work on developing their relationships with different kinds of animals that could talk to them in ways that you wouldn't normally expect, maybe we could have like a party sometime after I'm back and everyone could share their progress on the animal spirit front and what they've learned. And that might be a heck of a lot of fun. So with that, I invite you all to join in singing this last hymn, Dear Weaver of Our Lives Design, again about our relationship with a technology, but also with a spiritual angle to it. And again, for those of you who haven't been around, we're asking that you sing but not belt it out, just sing in a kind of normal voice, but I invite you to stand for this as well. Somehow we lost the third verse there, and so I will make that my benediction. Let eyes that in the plainest cloth a hidden beauty see, discern in us our richest hues, and show us the patterns that we may use to set our spirits free. And so let us do that. Let's find our richest hues in all that we make and do, and use that to set our spirits free. Blessed be and amen.